America's alliances weren't strong enough to contain its old enemy, Russia. But the cables show the US also has a difficult relationship with the world's rising power, China. The United States has to tread carefully when it deals with China. No other nation comes as near to the United States economically, and China continues to develop its military machine. The cables reveal a major military confrontation with China that happened largely in secret. It started in January 2007 when, without warning, the Chinese army shot down one of their own satellites.
They know how dependent we are on satellites for intelligence, communications, and so on, thus their development of an anti-satellite capability. They have a sophisticated, targeted approach to identify our vulnerabilities.
Privately, the Americans registered their anger at the Chinese move, but they were determined to keep public relations warm.
We don't want to see a situation where there is any militarization of space.
I believe there is reason to be optimistic about the U.S.-China relationship.
Behind the scenes, things were very different. The two powers were now locked into a confrontation about military power in space, and the tone of the cables was direct and angry.
Any purposeful interference with U.S. space systems will be interpreted as an escalation in a crisis or conflict.
And what's interesting, in contrast to the public pleasantries, is the open aggression in the cables sent to the Chinese. In one cable, sent from the then US Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, the familiar tactful language has gone.
The United States reserves the right to defend and protect its space systems with a wide range of options, from diplomatic to military.
Assistant Secretary of State Christopher Hill was one of those taking the lead in America's diplomacy with the Chinese. Condoleezza Rice, she sends a very robust cable. It even raises the prospect of the use of force. So that's an amazing sense of aggression and tension.
She was obviously angry with the Chinese, as we all were. She really did let them have it, and I think they deserved it.
This is the cables at their most revealing. The language now being traded between the US and China is fierce. The Chinese response to the American cables is just as aggressive.
The United States should stop airing its gratuitous suspicion, groundless accusations, and endless quibble on this issue.
Certainly, we put down a marker with the Chinese and made it very clear that we care about this. The Chinese are not going to say, oh my goodness, we're sorry we did it and we'll never do it again. Instead, they came back with a very nasty statement of their own.
The next message from America was not diplomatic. This is the USS Lake Erie operating in the Pacific in the spring of 2008. The Americans are about to shoot down one of their own satellites. In public, America said that the satellite was out of control, but from the cables, we know the background, and the message to China wasn't subtle. And then you shot down one of your satellites?
That's right.
Was that to teach them a lesson?
No, actually, it was to prevent the satellite from falling to Earth. But it clearly had the ancillary benefit of demonstrating an important capability.
The more you dig into the cables, the more the complexity of America's relationship with China is revealed. Despite China being their closest rival, the cables show the lengths America will go to make the Chinese happy. This became dramatically clear in 2008 when China hosted the Olympic Games.
Oh! Someone, as I speak, someone has tried to grab the torch from Connie Huck, the former Blue Peter presenter. A man...
Protesters, angry at China's human rights record, tried to disrupt the journey of the Olympic torch around the globe. This seemed to be the perfect moment for America to take a stand.
We believe in human rights and human dignity. We believe in the human condition. We believe in freedom. And we're willing to take the lead.
Well, I remember when the torch runners came to San Francisco, we wanted to try and avoid some of the same incidents that, if I remember correctly, had occurred in Europe, where they had been prevented from getting to their destination.
On the day the torch was to be paraded through San Francisco, the route was shortened and changed at the last moment. It was one of the few places in the world where the journey of the torch was not interrupted by protesters. America betrayed one of its own ideals, the right to protest, to appease the Chinese. And a cable from the American embassy in China suggests the gamble paid off.
The lack of major incidents at the torch run in San Francisco earned us goodwill and gratitude in Beijing and has given us a degree of leverage.
Some world leaders decided not to attend the Games themselves because of China's human rights record, but America chose to go. It was another US attempt to show support for China.
I'm going to the Olympics. I view the Olympics as a sporting event. I am not going to go and use the Olympics as an opportunity to express my opinions to the Chinese people in a public way, because I do it all the time with the president.
It was an important statement by George W. Bush. We value the relationship. We understand the importance of this issue to you. And so that when we have issues that we say are important to us, we hope you will also pay attention. That's the message.
But did the strategy work? One of the issues America often raised was the human rights of Chinese citizens.
Contacts corroborated international reports of increased detentions and harassment of Chinese human rights activists and dissidents in the lead-up to the president's visit. U.S. political officer conveyed the United States government's deep concern, noting reports that a lawyer was severely tortured.
We would raise specific cases. Particular noted individual who's being detained, who we would urge that they release. We invariably tried to do it more in private than in public, just in terms of not antagonizing the Chinese. This is always a very delicate balance.
Now, thanks to the cables, we can see who America was trying to help behind closed doors and how they did it.
Ambassador expressed U.S. concern over the house arrest of Zhang Jinyan, the wife of imprisoned rights activist Hu Jia.
Individual cases were raised at the highest level. We've tracked this couple down. Hu Jia and his wife Zhang Jinyan are human rights campaigners and have been in conflict with the authorities for 6 years. This video, shot by the couple themselves, shows the sort of intimidation they faced over those years. Zhang confronts the secret police who follow her every move. We could only reach her by video phone.
Police plainclothes started to monitor our apartment and started to follow us where we go.
In desperation, Zhang appealed to the American embassy for help. What did you think they would go and do?
I didn't expect too much. I hope they can contribute to Hu Jia's coming home. That's all.
What did they say to you? What did they say they would do?
They will try their best.
And now, thanks to the cables, we can see the Americans did raise the case.
The ambassador urged China to immediately release rights activist Zhang Jinyan.
But there are accusations that this effort was half-hearted.
a Chinese official denied that Zhang Jinyan's movements or communications were restricted. She was not under house arrest. Officials had taken no measures against her.
Sophie Richardson is a human rights expert who monitors China.
I think one of the things that the cables reveal is a gap between what people knew, which was quite a bit, and what they were actually doing about it, which was, I think, not nearly enough.
We can see in the cables America struggling to influence China in the way it would like. One of the reasons for this is China's new economic strength, a truth captured in one revelatory cable. Hilary Clinton is talking about China with her team from the State Department.
Secretary Clinton noted the challenges posed by China's economic rise, asking, "How do you deal toughly with your banker?"
After the financial crisis of 2008, America went cap in hand to China. By effectively lending the US billions of dollars, China saved the superpower's finances. The Chinese became America's largest foreign creditor. It marked a seismic shift in the balance of power between the two nations.
The level of United States debt to China is a national security concern. It gives China leverage that has significant policy implications. We understand that intellectually. We, as a government, are continuing to wrestle with what do we do about that.
In the months after the financial crisis, America bent over backwards to emphasize the warmth in its relationship with China.
I appreciate greatly the Chinese government's continuing confidence in United States treasuries.
But in private, American diplomats were watching China change, developing a new arrogance in its diplomacy. And in secret cables they thought we would never read, they make increasingly undiplomatic comments.
China is making no friends with its newly pugnacious attitude.
And America realizes its influence over China is diminishing. Diplomats secretly acknowledge that China is no longer listening.
Little progress had been achieved, and China had not acknowledged U.S. concerns.
And the cables report that China is even turning the arguments about human rights against America.
China recommended the United States focus on its own human rights issues and stop acting like a human rights god.
The Chinese do not shy away from using anger and from speaking very, very plainly on these things. Not all diplomatic engagements are decisive. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and sometimes it just it doesn't change.
In the end, the cables track a failing strategy. A strong China chose to ignore a weakened America, and repression has worsened.
The reality is that we are 8 or 9 months into the worst crackdown we've seen in China in about 15 years.
And though the US raised her case at the highest levels, little has changed for Zhang Jinyan.
So what we see in that film, is that still going on?
Yes, now. Until now.
So there are people outside your house right now?
Yes.
And if anything, the Wikileaks cables release has only served to harden the conviction of some in China that the Americans can't be trusted.
I think the cables, became grist for a very conservative, kind of hardline element in China whose entire modus operandi, modus vivendi, is you must avoid talking to foreigners. You must be very careful dealing with foreigners.
The story of China, told through the cables, is a clear illustration of America's declining power. What we found is the United States struggling to deal with its new rival. But there are other nations that America sees as a far more direct threat.